Ravens flock, what's going on? I hope everybody's having a good July so far. So, firstly, I wanted to say RIP to Kyrie Jackson. He's not a Raven, but he was a rookie for the Minnesota Vikings, and over the past a couple of days ago, he had passed away in a car crash in Maryland, which it's very tragic to see. Obviously, I feel for like his family and Vikings fans who are all starting to warm up to him. It's just a really tragic thing to see somebody work so hard. They get to that next level. They want to have their chance to change their lives, and then it just so quickly was just snapped away from them. So it's very sad to see. But as far as the topic for the video, I wanted to talk about Cam Newton, who recently on his podcast, he was asked by a viewer who he thinks the greatest dual threat QB of all time is, and he named Lamar Jackson. It's somewhat surprising to me that he did that, just because I would have expected Cam to name himself as the best, but he kept it very honest, and I definitely respect that. Like, he put Lamar and Vic over him, and I feel like most Ravens fans can agree with that. Even though Lamar still needs to improve in several areas, and I still don't think we've seen the best of Lamar Jackson, we can't deny that he's already at a point where if he stopped playing today, he has a Hall of Fame resume. It's not even debatable. Like he's one of a handful of players to have multiple MVPs. He's one of only two players to win a unanimous MVP, and just last season he was one vote away from being the only player to win MVP unanimously 2 times. Like, he's won 75% of his games. He's tied for the most games in NFL history with the perfect passer rating. Like we could go on and on about all the accomplishments of Lamar Jackson. For somebody who's only about 27, it's like an insane list, especially considering that his rookie season, he really didn't start until like the second half of the year, just still in 5.5 or 6.5 years, just like so many things he's done and just had such a crazy impact on the NFL in such a short period of time. I wanted to tie this into the Mount Rushmore conversation that popped up last week. So a video came out discussing which players should be on the Mount Rushmore for each NFL team. For the Ravens, on their Mount Rushmore, they had Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Johnathon Ogden, and Lamar Jackson. And because of this, as it was intended, it sparked some debate amongst different fan bases on who they think should or shouldn't be on the list. Amongst Ravens fans, surprisingly, it really, from what I saw, it wasn't really that disrespectful of a debate, really. But, it seemed like everybody was cool with the list, but they might have maybe wanted to switch 1 or 2 people out. But it definitely shows how lucky we are as a fan base to have, even though we have such a young franchise, it's been able to produce so many legendary players in such a short amount of time. Like, you have other teams like the Jacksonville Jaguars that really don't have anybody to put on their Mount Rushmore. Like, they still put people on it, but it wasn't anybody too impressive, honestly. Like, their Mount Rushmore had like one Hall of Famer, because in their franchise's history, they've only had one person make the Hall of Fame. Whereas in the case of the Ravens, it's like countless legendary players, countless past players who made the Hall of Fame, and even players right now who are on our roster right now who are either guarantees to make the Hall of Fame or will have a strong chance. Like, I think at this point, Lamar is already a lock for the Hall of Fame. I think Mark Andrews, if he could stay healthy, is going to have a strong case for the Hall of Fame. It's still too early for Kyle Hamilton, but at this point, man, I mean, I don't even care if it's too early. Kyle Hamilton, as long as he stays healthy, will be a Hall of Famer. Like, he's just too gifted and too versatile. Obviously, I'm not saying he's the next. I'm not saying he's better than Ed Reed, but I think when it's all said and done, he's gonna be up there when people look back and say and talk about who's the best safety of all time. But as far as who I would put on my Mount Rushmore, it would look similar to this list, but it wouldn't look exactly the same. I think they all still deserve it, obviously, but personally, I would put Terrell Suggs on the Mount Rushmore instead of Johnathon Ogden. Again, there's no wrong answer here. Like, Johnathon Ogden him being on the list is, I mean, him being on the Mount Rushmore is fine. It's just, again, a matter of preference. Like, I got to witness the prime of Terrell Suggs. I didn't witness the prime of Johnathon Ogden. By the time I started to really get into football around like the mid to late 2000s, like somewhere around like 07, 08, Johnathon Ogden was already retiring. Whereas again, I got to witness the prime of Terrell Suggs. So it's, again, me personally, I would just pick Terrell over him. And then on top of that, I think a lot of people, including Ravens fans, they just completely overlook how dominant Terrell Suggs was, not just in Ravens history, but in NFL history. Like, Terrell Suggs is 8th all time in sacks in NFL history. Now, on the unofficial list of sack leaders, like, before they started calculating or counting sack as like a real stat, on like the unofficial list, he's like, I think 12, but on the official list, since they started counting sacks as a statistic back in 1982, Terrell Suggs is literally 8th all time. And I think people really overlook how dominant he was. And also, even when it comes to his personality, like, he was just somebody who just had the attitude of what we talk about whenever we say play like a Raven, or whenever we think about what an ideal Raven should be when it comes to their attitude and their play style and their toughness. So again, I would just prefer to put T Sizzle on that list, but let me know in the comment section below. Do you think Terrell Suggs should be on the list, or do you think somebody else should be on the list? And if so, who do you think should be on that Mount Rushmore? And do you agree with Cam Newton when Cam Newton says that Lamar Jackson is he said he's the greatest dual threat quarterback of all time? Let me know in the comment section below.